And so I'm going to go over with you guys now this little written technique that I call TAG. It's just a fun acronym to remember what it is. It stands for Truth, Acceptance, Go. TAG. It's a fun way to remember it, and it's a great way to think of it. It's like you want to play tag with your fears. Tag fear, you're it. I'm going to play this creative game with my worst fears, the fears that are blocking me, because it's safe to play with them. It's safe to look your deepest fears, these old belief fears, straight in the eye. It's safe. It's scary as shit, but it's safe to work with them because they're not what they appear to be. And if we don't creatively work with them, we'll never get a shot at creatively working on the actual audition. What I want to talk to you guys about here first is how do you creatively work with that obsessional fear and make that a creative project and art so that then you can get to the art of the audition. Or actually a better way to put it, I think, is to have this acceptance and owning your own old beliefs as part of your audition technique itself. That's what I would encourage you. So this example I often give when I talk, and I won't go into this whole, I'm going to shorten it for our purposes here, but a true story that when I was in New York in the mid 90s as a young actor, I had a good agent. They were getting me good auditions, big auditions. At one point, my agent gave me a voicemail message. And the message was, Greg, we're out of headshots. We need you to drop off new headshots. They didn't want new pictures. They just wanted new copies of my headshot. And this was back in the day where if your agent didn't have actual tangible headshots, there was no audition happening. This is hard for many of you to envision, but there was no email. There was just bike messengers pedaling all over town, giving agents packages of headshots. So anyway, when I got this voicemail message, I knew there was no shot at me getting an audition again until I left my agent these headshots. And I knew all I had to do was drop them off. Just go to reproductions, get copies of them, drop them off. Didn't even have to talk to my agent. This is a true story. I did not make copies of the headshots or call my agent back or go to the office or do anything for over a year. This is a true frickin' story. But I thought about it every day. Now, if we were to go back in time and encounter this young Greg a couple months, let's say, or even a couple weeks after not doing this, after getting the voicemail message and just like doing nothing, and we were to say to him like, hey man, why are you terrified to contact your agent? The young Greg would probably say, well, it's weird meeting my future self and some other people, but besides that, you're wrong. I'm not terrified of talking to my agent. It's just been a weird 2 months. You know, I had the thing with the girl and that was weird. And then suddenly it had been a month and I'm like, oh man, I'm the guy who hasn't called his agent back. That's weird to be that guy, but I'm about to do it. On Tuesday, I'm about to do it. I'm going to call my agent and square this up, right? Because that's what we tell ourselves. Now, on Tuesday, I'm going to do the self-tape audition. On Tuesday, I'm going to hunker down. On Tuesday, just not right now. Well, retrospect is a funny thing because I know that young Greg was paralyzed with crippling fear, but he didn't know it or only knew it in moments. And I'll never forget one day, I finally called him back a year later and I was chain smoking Marlboro Lights. This is a payphone. There used to be payphones back then. I was chain smoking Marlboro Lights as I was wont to do. And I called that agency back. And of course, it was a totally new receptionist that answered the phone because it's been over a year. And I'm like, this is Greg Sims calling for whatever my agent's name was. And he's like, Greg who? And I go, fuck. And I slammed the phone down. And my hand was shaking as I lit another cigarette. And I had this doorway of clarity that opened up. And I think of these moments in life, especially in regards to seeing our old beliefs for what they are. They're like these doorways of clarity that open up. And if you've ever seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I will reference again later for another reason, but if you've ever seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, there's that classic scene where Harrison Ford rolls under the door right as the door's closing, and then he like jauntily grabs his hat, but he's got, it's closing and he's got to get through it. I think we can have these moments of awakening in our life where we suddenly realize a great and profound truth about ourselves, but we have about 2 minutes to physically act, to do something that is in our power. And if we don't, the awakening gets submerged again. It goes back into the unconscious. So for about 2 minutes, I sat there smoking, thinking, I'm effed. I am supposedly fulfilling my lifelong childhood dream of being a professional actor, and I'm too terrified to call my agent back, to work on an audition. I'm too terrified to get outside of my comfort zone in any real way. And it suddenly became clear to me that all the work I was doing in regard to auditioning in my acting career was fantasy work. I was playing at it. It's as if my office, this office here, were a total filthy mess. And I came to work every day to clean it, but I just lifted up my couch up and down for 3 hours and then left and said, it's a hard day at work, I'm exhausted. But I wasn't addressing the mess, and I wasn't doing anything real. That's what my life was as a young actor. Now, what that young Greg didn't realize that the old Greg knows, older Greg knows, is that there were old beliefs at play that were blocking me. So this little written technique that I'm going to go through here in a compact way, you can ask me more questions about it later, but it's a simple way to trick the unconscious mind into spilling the beans on what's really blocking us. And as soon as you do this, and you can do it on a notebook, on a napkin, on a sheet of paper, you can do it on your notes, for, you know, on whatever app on the phone. It's better to do it by hand if at all possible, because there's something about using a pen or a pencil and actually writing that seems to get to the truth in a different way. Plus, if you're using the phone, you're probably not going to finish the exercise because you're going to check Insta or the New York Times or just distract yourself. Because what I'm talking about here, a large part of you doesn't want to own your obsessional fears. A large part of you wants to stay in the comfort zone, wants to die in the comfort zone. That's just human nature. I don't fully understand it, of course, at all. I don't fully understand anything. Like Indiana Jones, I'm making it up as I go along, like we all are, whether we pretend to or not, right? But I do know from my own experience and witnessing it in others that part of us wants to stay. Part of us doesn't want to grow. Part of us doesn't want to enter the vulnerability of real creativity, of really being in what we actually have power over. So what you can do is, when you notice you're an obsessive fear, meaning you're about to start work on your self-tape audition, or you're about to call the agent, or you're about to do whatever it is, but if we're saying self-tape, right? Like you're about to start working and suddenly you are in obsessional fear. Your mind is going like, well, wait, am I doing the right scene? Am I not doing the right scene? Is anyone really going to watch this? What's the point of doing this? And is it going to be good? I don't think I'm going to be any good. What if it's not good? If any kind of obsessional fear hits, what you want to do on the paper is start by writing what the trigger seems to be. What is the thing you're obsessing about right now? So let's use myself as an example. That young Greg, if he knew this tag technique, let's say he got that voicemail message and his agent said, drop off new headshots. And he could acknowledge, oh my God, I'm obsessing about calling my agent back. I'm in obsessive fear. I am scared to call my agent back. What he would write at the top of the page is, I have fear about calling my agent back, or I'm obsessing about calling my agent back. And if you're about to work on your self-tape audition and you're like, why am I not working on it? Because I'm obsessing about the audition. I'm obsessing that it's not going to be any good. You would just write, I have fear that this audition won't be any good, or I have fear about working on this self-tape audition. And then what you want to do is write without thinking. Let it vomit on the page. And the linking phrase that works for like 95% of the people that I work with, and if it's not, we can tweak it, but this almost always works, is some version of, and because of that, I have fear. And because of that, I have fear. Meaning you just keep answering that question without thinking and write what comes out. And you don't stop until you see in black and white on the page something that is 100% false, not only for you, but for any human being. Because if we go deep enough, we see this. As I said earlier, the old beliefs that are blocking us are 100% of the time not true, but we believe them. They are misapprehensions, not only about ourselves, but about the human condition. And as we'll see here in a moment, or we'll talk about, we can't unbelieve them. And when we try to, we get all gummed up because we're attempting to do something we don't have power over. but we can accept that we have a delusion, and we can practice acting contrary to the delusion. We can practice acting on what's true, even though emotionally, psychologically, we're still tied to the old belief. So I'll give the example, right? So again, if the young Greg were to start with what that surface fear is, and he wants to keep going until he gets to something that is clearly untrue. So the young Greg might go, I have fear about calling my agent back because I have fear that it will lead to an awkward conversation. And because of that, I have fear they'll drop me as a client. And if they drop me as a client, I have fear I'll never get great audition opportunities. And if I don't get great audition opportunities, I have fear I'll never be truly successful as an actor. Okay? And a lot of the tags you take around self-tape will probably get to something close to what I just said. I have fear I'll never be truly great as an actor. That's what came up for me. And this is where the mind, part of the mind wants you to stop when you get right on top of the real old belief. Because I look at these old beliefs, and one way to look at them is they're invading organisms. They're fighting for survival. They're not real, but they don't want you to get there. This is why all these images from fairy tales and beautiful stories, the wizard in The Wizard of Oz, don't look at the man behind the curtain, thunder, lightning, don't look. Hey, it's just me, I'm not a wizard. Rumpelstiltskin, the boogeyman in so many, stories. When you know the boogeyman's name, when you look him in the eye, he shrivels up and goes because he ain't really real. But the closer you get to that truth, oh my God, you will try to convince yourself, don't dare look, don't dare look. So part of me wants that to be my old belief. I want it to be the old belief that, no, my old belief is that I will never be truly successful as an actor, but I just need to tell myself I will be. Or we may think like, I think I won't do good at this audition, but I just need to tell myself I will do good at this audition. But that's not in our power. I can't control result. And it's subjective as an MFer, right? It's like, what does that even mean, good? It's changing in my mind all the time. But the idea of like, I can self-will myself into being a successful actor, again, what's happening in the world right now shows us that ain't true. Or people have known this in different parts of the world for a long time. People that live in a ravaged, war-torn country, they can't will themselves into material success. Tell the person whose spouse just got killed by a drunk driver, gosh, if you guys would have believed better, you could have created a new reality. No, hell no. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. I may never be a successful actor because I may get hit by a bus in 5 minutes. I may not get the part because it went to the guy's cousin. It is not in my power to be a successful actor. So we haven't gotten to the old belief until we get to something that's not true. But you're close to it when you want to stop, when the mind is like, don't go any further, please, please, please. But if that young Greg went further, it might look like this if you took it all the way down. I have fear about calling my agent back because I fear it will be a awkward conversation. Because that I feel they'll drop me as a client. If they drop me as a client, I have fear I'll never get great audition opportunities. And if I never get great audition opportunities, I have fear I'll never be truly successful as an actor. And if I'm not truly successful as an actor, my life will have no value or meaning. I'll be crushed by regret and I'll be annihilated. Now that's not true. If I'm not a success as an actor, my life will have no value or meaning. I will be crushed by regret and I'll be annihilated. That was one of my core old beliefs and still is today. It changes around a little bit, but the most important thing is I have a whole different relationship with it than I ever thought possible. But I think many of you, if you try this exercise, you'll find similar old beliefs around auditioning, that at the bottom is often something like, if I'm not a success, my life will have no value or meaning. I'll be crushed by regret and I'll be annihilated. I will never experience real love. I'll live in regret for the rest of my life. I'll have an unhappy life. I'll be miserable. None of this is true, right? And what I ask you to do as part of this tag process is once you get to that old belief, the next step is to write out another little fun acronym, net, the net. The net is the thing that catches us. The net is the new empowering truth. The new empowering truth. Because if we're saying the old belief is not true, then what is true? What's something that we can articulate that we don't believe about ourselves, but deep down we know to be true? And it's phrased in such a way that empowers us personally. And it's not Pollyanna, New Age thinking. It's like based on our assessment of reality, we can say, no, I believe that to be true. But you don't believe it for yourself because the old belief is still probably really with you and maybe for the rest of your life. And that's actually okay. So it's a fun game. Fun. It's a game we can play. Ultimately, it is and can be. But imagine a loved one said that old belief to you. How do we come up with a new empowering truth? Because a lot of time when I work with people, they're like, okay, you're right. I believe that. I believe if I'm not a reoccurring guest star on Westworld, my life is going to have no meaning, or I'll be miserable, I'll be crushed by regret or whatever. But I believe it. So I can't tell myself that, oh, it doesn't matter. Well, imagine a loved one said that to you. What would you say to the loved one? Because deep down, we know what's true. And when I imagine my beautiful 5-year-old daughter grown to be a 21-year-old woman, and if I imagine her saying to me, Daddy, I just have fear that if I'm not a successful ballerina, my life will have no value or meaning. I'll be crushed by regret and be annihilated. If she were to say that to me, I wouldn't go, maybe, yeah, we better get you a better teacher, because that could be, we don't want that to happen. Let's work harder. Come on, do better. I don't do that, right? Immediately when we think about a loved one saying that to us, something true and loving begins to happen, and we connect with the truth. Right away, I would comfort my daughter and speak of the truth. And this can take practice sometimes to really begin to articulate. And the great thing is your old beliefs will come up a lot, especially once you start sniffing them out. So you can take this tag a lot and the same ones will come up and you can just keep embracing them and working with them. So for time over me, the new empowering truth that answered my old belief, which again was, if I'm not a success as an actor, my life will have no value or meaning. I'll be crushed by regret and I'll be annihilated. The new empowering truth became, whether or not I'm ever a success as an actor has no bearing at all on anything that has real and lasting value in my life. As long as I imperfectly practice my ever-expanding principles, my life is guaranteed to have value and meaning beyond measure. I will never be crushed by regret. And what's most real about me can never be annihilated. Now that resonates really true with me. It doesn't always move me so much as it just did, but it always resonates as true. And if you say something like that to the mind goes, okay, yeah, technically, that is technically true what you just said. Whereas if you say to the mind, we're going to book this job, the mind goes, how do you know you didn't book the last one, the last 5? The guy in the waiting room looks like your better looking younger brother. Why isn't he going to book the job? Huh? How do you know? Self-hatred spiral. But when we speak the truth to ourselves, part of us can't argue. But the feelings around the old belief are still probably going to be really prevalent, especially when you're first doing this. So the next step I ask the individual to do is, you've got the old belief, you've got the new empowering truth, then write down and own what you're feeling. It can be helpful to write it down, but most importantly, feel it. Be honest with yourself. I just wrote that old belief. I just wrote the new empowering truth. Now, what am I feeling right now? Sad. A little faith, a little positivity, maybe from that, new empowering truth, but maybe it's fear, self-hatred, shame. And to just sit with the feelings and own them and just be with your feelings for a couple minutes, and then have this contemplative dialogue with yourself where in essence you say, hey, Greg, if since early childhood you thought that if you weren't a success as an actor, your life would have no value or meaning, you'd be crushed by regret and you'd be annihilated, doesn't it make sense that you would be terrified right now to call your agent back or to work on this audition? Because it's not really about the audition, it's about that deeper thing. Doesn't that logically make sense that you'd be feeling these intense feelings? Yeah, actually that does make sense. But Greg, can you admit that you've had it ass backwards your whole life? the feelings aren't evidence that the old belief is true. You've just thought the old belief for so long that it's generated this emotional state. So can you own the feelings, not try to change them, but practice acting as if the new empowering truth is true? Well, we can do that. So if the young Greg were to do this exercise right when he got the message to call his agent back, what might a next right action be? And this is the final step of the tag process, is after owning the old belief and owning the new empowering truth and feeling the feelings, what might the version of you do? Not your actual version, because you still believe the old belief, but the version that really believed the new empowering truth, what would they do? And so that young Greg might go, well, they would call their agent back. Or you might go, well, I would start working on this audition. Not because it's what's going to give me the meaning of my life and it's going to save me from regret. No, because this is my job and this is the thing I'm choosing to work on. Or maybe we're suddenly inspired to call a friend back or to share what we just discovered with someone else, which is a great thing to do, to share all this with a trusted friend. But maybe we're called to do something that really connects us with our principles in a real direct way before working on the audition, so we can get more like kind of mainline attached to our principles. Or maybe we just work on the audition, but we're working on it for the sake of working on it. And even though emotionally, psychologically, that feeling is there, and this is a great segue into now actually, the working on these auditions, but we come to see that whatever we're feeling is actually workable. We can act through it. We don't have to get rid of these feelings, and we can't, because they've been with us for a long time. Part of the reason that I worshiped my acting career for so long was because I had some abuse in childhood in an early age, from not the family, from outside the family. But it led to very terrifying feelings. And soon after this event of abuse, I got on stage for the first time at the age of 6. And it was this beautiful experience. I remember it, right? And it made me feel safe. I definitely felt like it was a spiritual calling to act. I wouldn't describe it as that at the time, but I felt safe and in the flow and connected and at peace. And those things are all great. But this young boy erroneously developed the old belief that if I wasn't involved with great acting and people didn't think I was great, I would never be safe. I could never have peace. I could never experience tranquility and meaning. It's not true. But I developed that old belief. And today, as a man, sometimes acting still does give me connectivity and deep meaning and tranquility. And sometimes it doesn't. But the most important thing is I don't worship it. Or if I catch myself worshiping the audition or worshiping my career, I have tools to help me surrender and get back in touch with what's real. And I have a way of living as a man where I'm engaged with some principles and actions in a real tangible, literal way on a daily basis that assures me a modicum of meaning and flow and connectivity and tranquility and peace. So I'm not drawn to worship acting as much as I once was, right? So the feelings are workable, okay? The feelings are all workable. Oh, and real quick, another way to say it, and then I'm gonna, we're gonna really do some acting here. I'm gonna demonstrate some stuff. I have some volunteers that I've randomly chosen, semi-randomly before this, that we're gonna play with some people here and talk about the ways that I find it very helpful to approach the audition. But everything I've been talking about is so important from my point of view, because if you're not beginning the audition process with an understanding of what I've been talking about, the whole audition ends up being about trying to control result or feeling. And the image I wanted to say to describe this relationship with old beliefs, and really to describe the audition itself, when I was I'm a recovered drug addict and alcoholic. I've been sober for many years now, but I used to be way out of control. And when I was 22 or something, I was at a party and I was on 5 hits of really, really bad LSD. And if you've ever been on really bad hallucinogens, it's not fun. I was at this party and I felt like I was seeing my dead grandmother come out of the walls. Everybody's face was melting. I was a really insecure young man, and I felt more insecure than I ever had in my life. And I felt like I was watching the atoms of my body just drift away and go into space. And I was about to turn to a friend and say, take me to the hospital. I cannot live the next 7 hours like this. When all of a sudden another friend of mine sat on the couch opposite me. And I don't know where these guys come from. The guy that when you're in your early 20s, there's someone who's like 21 and is a drug shaman, like at 21. Like, what has this guy been doing, right? But I had one of those friends, and he sat across from me because he could tell what I was going through. And he looked me in the eye and he said, hey, Greg, remember, it's just the drugs. And I thought, oh, wow, it's just the drugs. And I actually began to enjoy the party and enjoy being massively insecure because I was in touch with the truth that it was the drugs. I didn't try to not feel the feelings and not see the hallucinations. I accepted them and realized I could have a different opinion about them and act through them or along with them. So this is what we're looking to do when the old beliefs get triggered, and it's what we're looking to do with the audition in general. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense and you can relate it to other stuff I'm going to talk about now, but it's very important from my point of view, which is why I spend so much time talking about it.